Morena, and welcome to the postgraduate symposium. Jackie and I have prepared a very fun and long day for you all. So we're gonna start with a karakia, and then Andreas, and then Roslyn, and then we'll start off the day. Jackie, Andreas. Yes.
Tēnā koutou katoa, and welcome to this year's postgraduate symposium here at the School of Landscape Architecture. My name is Andreas Wiesner. I'm the incoming head of school full-time for next year. So today we have 15 master's and PhD students. They're going to present their research work. So like I said before, it's a really full day. And I think you can see the full bandwidth of what we're doing here in terms of our postgraduate student work. So this is really a wonderful opportunity for our students, but also for our school to showcase the diversity and excellence of really what we're doing. And also, of course, what our staff is doing in terms of their postgrad supervision. If you are interested in some of the details of the work, there are some posters as well hanging in the corridor. This is also the way to the bathroom. So if you need to go to the bathroom, you can combine that maybe by having a look at the posters which are hanging. Very efficient use of time. But first of all, I would like to thank Nada in the back and Jackie for organizing this event. It always takes a lot of effort to do these kind of things. And I'm really thankful for both of you that you have dedicated your time doing this year. Of course, I'm very thankful for our postgraduate students who are here today and who are going to present their work, and also for our panel members who will, I think, be sitting here in front, looks like it, and well, accompany our students in their respective sessions. I think my role here is mainly to let you know about a couple of housekeeping rules. As I said before, the bathrooms are at the end of the corridor to the right-hand side. In the case of an emergency, a fire, an earthquake, whatever, if the building has to be evacuated, the nearest emergency exit that we should use is the one, and you go outside this door to your left, and then we will gather there on the lawn outside. So if you hear any kind of alarm signals and we have to go outside, please go this way. Well, and that I think was the end of my very short speech today, and I'm very happy to introduce you to Professor Roslyn Kerr, who is the Dean of our faculty. And she will work on this one today.
Is there anyone else who needs to leave in? Hang on. It's fine. You're good under control there, no?
If you want to minimize the whole team speaking.
Well, tēnā koutou katoa, and thank you so much for inviting me to do this. And I was very surprised to be invited to, because the last time I did this, I made everybody cry. So this time, that I'd actually have a slightly more positive topic, and hence my topic of why you're all good students. And actually, this can also be extended to why you're all good academics. Some of what I'm going to speak about is quite relevant to academics as well. So in thinking what to talk about, I was thinking back to my own postgrad and many postgrads that I know, and I realised there's one thing that every single one of them has in common, and that is that most of them don't feel like they're good enough. Most of them feel like, I don't know what I'm doing. Everybody else seems to have it all together and they're making great progress and they're just flying along and I'm just pretending and I'm really not. And I see this a lot. And so I just wanted to sort of talk about this topic today, get it out in the open and talk about strategies and ways that I've seen people actually work through this and how that works. So that's what I'm going to chat about today. But firstly, understand why people feel this way, both academics and students. Because our entire system of scientific peer review is set up on a whole mode of critique. So anything that we have published has to go through a fierce process of quite a lot of critique. People are looking at it, saying what is wrong with it. And I mean, that cartoon I've seen a million times over the year, but I think it is actually entirely accurate of exactly how the peer review process can feel, or in a student's case, sometimes in terms of having their work commented on over and over again by supervisors, by others, etc. So often. And it can be a really bruising process. And I know I've had reviews that have taken me literally a year to recover from because I've been so upset by them. So it's something that we all face, and it can be quite difficult. The other thing about academia too is it's not like sport where if you win an Olympic gold medal, for that brief moment in time, you can say, I'm the best in the world. There is no one better than me. There's no concept like that in academia. There's so many different ways in which people are judged. And so you can always feel like, even if you win some massive award or have some huge number of citations, you always feel like there's someone else who's done something else, doing impressive. And so it's easy to feel that, oh, I'm not good enough, there's always people better than me. But the thing is, no one in academia is good at everything. No student has every possible skill. No academic has every possible skill, no matter how brilliant they are. I mean, these are just things off the top of my head that I just threw out thinking, okay, what makes a good researcher? What sorts of skills? There's a whole lot of them up there. I don't know anyone who has every single one of them. A lot of them sort of work against each other, and then if you're good at one thing, you're not so good at another. And so there is so many different ways that you can be outstanding, and you don't have to be like everybody else. The other thing to remember is that the strengths and weaknesses are actually the same thing. These are not different, they're the same. So I'm just going to use a couple of traits here. So this is me. It's also your current head of school and your former head of school. The three of us love to have things done in advance because the further ahead of time, the better. So we're happy when we're going in 3 years' time. That's how we've always been, it's how we're wired. We work that way. And I don't know about Andres and Jill, but for me, the flip side of this means that I'm rubbish if I have to get something done the night before for the next morning. Unlike my husband, who's the exact opposite, who thrives and that all-nighter to get something in by 1 a.m. the next morning. No, I'm a disaster with that. I panic, I don't do a good job, it crushes me. The other thing that can happen with people like this that I've seen in a lot of students, if they're really organised, they end up organising everybody else as well. So I've had students who start and I think this student's going to be fantastic. And then in 3 months, they're running 5 communities of the postgrad rep, 4 different things, whatever else, and they're struggling to find time for their PhD. So this happens a lot. Another example, the brilliant theoretician. So this person that's come through with very high grades from all their essays and so forth, their ability to understand difficult stuff is extraordinary, really, really strong. But sometimes the PhD student, what happens is they therefore want to read everything. They love theory and they go down every possible rabbit hole. And so while we can look at these students and go, boy, I wish I had that theoretical ability, as I have said many times myself, I wish I did. I do see that, these people also sometimes have struggles in dealing with that as well and the way that they work through. The other thing is sometimes humans aren't great at recognising what our strengths are. So we don't even really know what to work on. And there's probably a lot of reasons for this, but two jump out to me, is when things are easy for us, we don't notice that we're good at them, because we just do them. So we don't think about it, it just happens. So, I'm very often have to learn to plan, just plan. That's the way it is. We're good at that. So you don't notice when something's easy for you. You don't realise it's a strength, because you just assume everybody finds it easy. They don't. But the other thing is, and I'm not an evolutionary biologist at all, but my understanding is too that in terms of evolutionary biology is that we're wired to seek the negative, because that's what we've got to respond to in order to survive. And so we're not actually that good at seeing it, looking for the positive. We're really good at looking for the negative. So we've got this sort of negative bias within us. How do you recognize your strengths? What do you work out? What am I actually good at? And where do I thrive? Where are my good points? One thing is to ask other people. So other people are really good at recognizing your strengths. They look around and go, wow, I wish I could do what that person does. So that's a really easy way to find out, what am I good at? Where are my strengths compared to other people? Also, notice things where if you're puzzled as to why somebody else seems to be finding something difficult. If you're in that situation, probably it's because you're really good at it and haven't had to actually learn it. And so you would take it for granted that it's an easy skill, whereas you know it's a strength of yours, but the other person's actually finding it a little bit harder. The internet is full of lovely psychobabble tests at the moment, there's heaps of them. But there's lots of crappy ones, but of course there's also lots of studies internationally where they actually want you to do personality and so forth, tests to add to your own data sets. So you can actually go and find out and do those sort of things now quite easily online, and you're actually contributing to various psychologist research all over the place. And they can be great in terms of finding out all sorts of things about where you are on the normal curve in terms of different traits that you have. So there's a few things. Some others, though, that are a little bit more beyond strengths and so forth. So something to remember is every single person here has earned where you are today. So I'm a sociologist, so I'm always thinking about all the different factors around privilege and ethnicity and gender and all these factors and how they make a difference to people's lives. And so they are important. But at the end of the day, when it comes to academia, no one gets to postgraduate, no one gets to academia unless they've done an awful lot of work. You've had to write a lot of stuff, you've had to pass a lot of stuff, you've had to get good grades, and you've earned it. And sometimes it's easy to think, oh, it's just luck. I'm not really that great. No, you earned it. You did the work and you deserve to be here. Similarly, you deserve, because of that, you deserve your success. Anything that happens to you, you should deserve. Something that, as an Australian, I always find puzzling in New Zealand is this obsession with humility. Everyone says, I'm humbled by things. No, be proud. Be proud of your achievements. I did good. Say that to yourself. Don't feel it's an embarrassment to feel proud of your achievements. It's a great thing that you've achieved things. Also, in terms of who to compare yourself to, the only person you should compare yourself to is others. I mean, it's not others. Right. You're falling yourself. The person you were either last year, last week, 10 years ago, whatever. When you do that, you really, really notice how much you've progressed. You think back 10 years ago to what you might have been doing and what you knew and the things you said compared to what you're doing now. There's a huge growth there for everybody. There always is. So try to really focus on that in terms of looking at your own potential rather than others. And the other thing, and this is actually, for me, this is probably a big coping mechanism for me personally, is that tracking the small things that you do. So sometimes things can feel really overwhelming and you're like, oh, I can't possibly complete that massive task. But what I found works really, really well for me, and maybe for others as well, is to really know when you do small things. So if I arrive at work one day and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a big task I've got to do and I just don't know how to do it, it's so huge. All I would do is do a whole lot of small things, tiny things, like sending emails, and then I'll write them on my to-do list and cross them off. And after I've done about 5 of them, my brain's tripped into, oh, you're very, very productive today, aren't you? Very good. Look at all you've done. And eventually, after about the 6th or 7th thing, my brain goes, right, I think I'm going to be getting a good task now. Write out so you can actually trick yourself into feeling good about your own achievement. So that's pretty much all. That's all I got on this topic for today. But yeah, I guess good luck to everybody. I don't think with your studies. And I hope that you do feel good about yourselves and enjoy your study and enjoy your day-to-day as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roslyn, for this very encouraging talk. I could recognize a few treats there as well. Right, I think we can move on to our first session, and so we have three presenters here: Jen Walker, Don, who's here in the first row, and Henley over there in the third row. So one online and two here in the room. And we have a panel as well. So may I ask the panel members, Jackie, Sandhya, and Anthony, to move a little bit forward to their specially reserved places here. Take all the important things you need with you. All right. Okay, so I may welcome Jamie. Jamie, can you hear us?
Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Yes, Jamie, we can hear you now very clearly.
About the
So,
echo?
welcome to this event, and you may start with your presentation.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for I am candidate consultant. Today, I will present the beginning and the process of my PhD research titled Landscape. I want to thank my supervisor, content of this presentation will follow this.
In this point, I will show the results on one of the case studies. Today, I will show the case of a statue in the city of Popayán, Colombia. The national government had expressed interest in the erection of two commemorative monuments on the occasion of the 400th anniversary of the town's founding. One of the proposed monuments was an equestrian statue of early conquistador Sebastián de Belalcázar, founder of Popayán and several other cities in southern Colombia. And the other statue will be a monument to Cacique Pubén, the 16th century leader of the Pubenenses indigenous group. The statue of Cacique Pubén will be on Tucán Hill, which overlooks the city, while Belalcázar's statue will be set in the center of Popayán Town Square, during that time, La Plaza San Francisco. Events transpired differently than planned. However, instead of being placed in the square, a statue of Belalcázar was placed in 1939 at the top of the Morro de Tucán or Tucán Hill. This location was the site of pre-Columbian cemetery that date back to at least 500 BCE. In the 1950s, archaeologist Julio César Cubillos conducted excavations on the pyramid-like site and discovered 14 tombs along with a number of human remains and many artifacts such as clay pots and ornaments. Obviously, placing the statue of the Spanish conquistador in this location might be problematic. Conversely, Cacique's monument was also built. However, it soon disappeared due to an unclear set of disputes and controversies. The indigenous Misa group, original from Popayán area, on April 12 of 2019, conducted a trial against Belalcázar and found him guilty of genocide, disposition of land, physical and cultural disappearances of indigenous people, torture, slavery, and other human rights violations. The narratives of each side will allow a set of interpretations that determine the meaning of the place and characteristics of the site based on the online interviews. The first set of stakeholders are government representatives. The second set are academics and professionals in the design field. And the third set of stakeholders are local community leaders, civil society leaders, and indigenous representatives. This diagram shows the content and expression of the landscape narratives. Sebastián de Belalcázar was seen as a hero in a monument that was developed in 1937. After the symbolic trial, he was found guilty of a number of crimes, including genocide. On September 16, 2020, indigenous protesters reclaimed Colombian identity by toppling Popayán's Belalcázar monument. Indigenous leaders claim that the presence of the statue in the public space served as an offensive reminder of slavery, racial oppression, and other violations of social justice in the indigenous sacred site. As a part of the last phase, to continue with the example of the case study of Belalcázar, in the context of memorialization, the new conversations and narratives lead a negotiation process about public spaces, memory spaces, plazas, and monuments, which are open opportunities to reclaim native identity of a sacred space in Popayán, Cauca, Colombia. Here are some suggestions for which design responses might be included on the site. Symbols of fire, baskets, a tree, and one of the art forms from an artist from Popayan. Also, the statues of Cacique Puben. Others do not want to have anything at the site. They argue that the hill is already a monument made by the indigenous Pubenenses. From the literature review in the essay The Beholding Eye by Donald William Minnick, an American geographer explores an extended definition of landscape through an analysis of the several ways in which he proposed 10 views or perceptions of the landscape and the complexities of the human relation to it. Landscape as nature habitat, artifact, system, problem, wealth, ideology, history, place, and aesthetic. Dr. Minnick's interpretation as a method for decoding, understanding, and explaining landscapes in multiple ways of reading memorials, using some of his interpretations and developing other views as a result. From the interviews, we can interpret landscape memorials as places for celebration, culture, dialoguing, and state power. Landscape memorials as canvases for gender, class, race, and diverse voices. And landscape memorials as contested domains. I would like to conclude with colonial statues illustrate the symbolic power of a figure. Removing and debasing statues are palpable expressions of grief and anger, and the fraught questions over what to do with these memorials as a challenge for all involved in the complex realm of public space. Thank you very much, and this is all for me.
Buona Tato. I'm John Woods. Doing a PhD currently. The area of interest for me, carrying on much the same vein as what Jamie just talked about narratives, is looking at how drones can enrich landscape narratives. That they can reveal them within landscape and the unique perspective that they bring, which is often described as the drone's eye. So since I'm still in the framing up portion of my PhD, and I don't have a huge amount of results to share with you, a discussion yet, that's obviously a couple of years away at least. Knowing me, it'll be probably longer. So I thought I'd at least evoke and start to get you thinking too about how we can question our drones to potentially give us a different perspective on our landscape, some of the stories that they can tell, some of the stories that they can reveal, and also how they can move the landscape upwards. So if it's all right, I'll turn the lights off and I'm scared of the dark. Excellent. And this is basically the 15-minute presentation. So enjoy. Sorry, I forgot to say, I have actually curated this footage around 5 broad themes. The first one is landscape, sans people. So landscape as it is without people involved. Second one, people in the landscape. Third one, degraded landscapes. The third one, highly modified landscapes. The fifth one, restoration landscapes. And then bookending it back with landscapes without people. So we'll see that there's some themes within that as well.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Henley, and my research project is about the approach of evaluating the landscape performance. So basically, it's to work out a monetary value for all the benefits or a specific benefit that a design landscape can provide. So before we dive into my current study, I'll briefly go through the background of this evaluating research. The initial research direction I had 2 years ago is actually about post-occupancy evaluation and performance evaluation. So to get to understand the research field and its latest progress, I studied 40 actual performance evaluation cases that have been conducted in New Zealand. And these cases helped me to develop a general sense of such practices. This includes who's normally paid for such evaluations and who's actually conducting those evaluations. Are they the original designer of the projects, or are they the clients of the project, or maybe governments or Scotland? And the study also analyzed the purpose of conducting the evaluations, as well as the relationship between the funding sources and the evaluators, as well as the approach they used. And all this background information were concluded by this article that Jackie Shannon and I published last year. And after conducting that research, I feel that I was fully prepared with the background knowledge and are ready to conduct an evaluation ourselves. So when Jackie and I noticed that the Landscape Architect Foundation in the USA were calling for a case study entries, we submitted our application and were eventually granted a research funding. So in that study, Jackie and I evaluated the performance of the landscape developments of Tifariti, which is a subdivision on the eastern side of the Lincoln campus. So in that investigation process, we have also got support from the original designer of the landscape. In that study, we measured all the benefits that were expected to be provided by the landscape, which include environmental, social, and economic benefits. A range of methods were used to measure those benefits, including a mailbox survey and on-site measuring, observation, and plant checking, and many other approaches as well. And we also had wonderful contribution from the 2021 Landscape Critique class members who conducted their on-site observations and contribute their results to our research. So in the end, we achieved some results like this. We found that the residents have more positive landscape experience in Tifariti than in other similar subdivisions. And they also tend to exercise more and have a better mood and quality of life since moving to Tifariti. And we can say the residents tend to drive less and use alternative transport more often than before. We have also measured the species richness by using a crop-sorting approach and found that the number of the observed species on site has been doubling each year on average. We also studied two boxes for the comparison, and the result shows that Tifariti has a higher species density than the two boxes. So in the end, we actually got a lot of numbers, and we are pretty happy with the progress we have made for our exploration in that field. And we get case study published on the LAF website, talked about our findings and reflections on the Select conference. But when I'm preparing our publication and the presentation, one question popped out. So what does those numbers really mean? We now know that the landscape can sequester 239 tons of atmospheric carbon each year and reduce 5% of the on-site runoff. But is that good or not? And how much would be ideal, and how much would make our design cost effective? So I started to look back to my initial background of research and get my eyes focused on this timeline. So this is the development progress that has been made in the performance evaluation field collectively by the whole profession and discipline. So when we looked at the landscape website and conversations back into 2010, when designers talk about the highlights in their works, sometimes they say things like, we use the native plants and introduce those green stormwater planters, and we designed wonderful circulation systems. And this is all sounds great. As landscape architects, we all know the features, if being designed properly, will bring huge value to people in terms of biodiversity, water, energy, and user satisfaction. But when such description went to decision makers and other professionals that we work with, and even layperson, it sometimes turned out to be, well, it sounds good. It sounds really nice, but what values will they bring to me? So here we start. It's with talking about the features. But that is not to say that landscape architects aren't talking about the contribution of the features at all. There were many cases that landscape architects talk about the benefits, but not quantifying them. So we call this making claims. We, as landscape architects, see our profession as a green, sustainable profession, and because we grow trees and we introduce green infrastructures to cities, and our projects sequester carbon and help to mitigate climate change. But how and how much? And if we have a deeper look into literature and some evaluation cases, we may find that in some cases, the actual contribution the landscape projects may not always as significant as we thought. Second, sequestering carbons, yes, it sometimes, but may not be that significant. And in many cases, the emission we caused were far greater than the amount we sequestered. That's one scenario, when we need evaluations to help us better understand our own designs and help our design to better perform and function in reality. The other scenario is sometimes our landscape were found really doing a great job, but without the quantifying benefits, it's really hard to communicate the wonderful works that we have done to other professions, to the decision makers, and the rest of the world. However, the situation has been greatly improved over the past decades when landscape architects start to pay more attention to performance and conduct more evaluations and get more landscape benefits quantified. We have much more research publications focusing on landscape performance now than 10 years ago. So now when we get back to the timeline, we can see that over the past decades, landscape architecture profession has made a big step, moving from making claims to demonstrating the actual benefits. And by conducting our CSI projects, we practice our own evaluation under the field's leading evaluation framework and caught up with the latest evaluation practices we had in the landscape architecture field, and at the same time contributed some new evaluation method to the iterating LPS evaluation framework. But when I came back to those numbers from time to time, I started to think, well, they look good and persuasive to some extent, but in some cases, it's still not good enough or not sufficient to support our decision-making process. So when we need to make decisions, because there will always be costs whenever we build or improve a landscape. We make the landscape because that we want to get benefits from them. So when we spend our money or the taxpayers' money, we want to know, well, those money be used in an efficient way. And we want to make sure that the money we spend really going to bring us the expected values. And we want to make sure that the benefits we get will exceed the costs and the gain will exceed the pain. Selwyn district gets around 100 million rate income each year, and around 20% of it will be used for developing and maintaining parks, reserves, playgrounds, and other landscapes. So that is 20 million. That is a lot to pay. So we want to make sure that our gain exceeds the pay. So I believe that the next step for our exploration in the field should then be evaluated. So here we first moved from features to claims, and then to benefits, and eventually to value, which is the ultimate goal of all our designs. So how can we measure the value of the landscape? In some cases, the approach is more obvious. An example is the carbon credit. So in our TPRAPP study, we firstly quantify the sequestered carbon by the landscape, and then get the unit carbon credit price from the credit trading market, and work out the overall value of the benefits. But in most cases, the valuation process won't be that straightforward, because many of the benefits provided by the landscape are actually intangible benefits, including aesthetic values, cultural values, and much more. So those intangible benefits are very important to us, but often don't get counted just because they are difficult to measure. So in the real world, sometimes when landscape architects' proposal compete with the other types of proposal, money can easily go to the latter. So instead of planting some more street trees, let's just build a wider road because it helps us to move faster, and each dollar we spend there will bring back like $2.50 equivalent benefits, and that's gonna make our life better. And instead of providing more public open spaces, like just get residential development sprawl further and further, because we can't sell the public open space to people who are looking for a house. So these things happens not because the public open space and street trees have lower value than other options. It's just because we don't get the intangible benefits counted. So finally, it's the time to talk about the projects that I have been working on in the recent several months. So this study measured the value of the public open spaces in Lincoln. Although the public open spaces are not treated in the market, but their prices are reviewed through people's everyday behavior. So when people buying a house, they prefer to buy a house that has a nice view and get a high accessibility to recreational opportunities and have a nice park around. But with all those features available, normally you will have a higher price to pay. So people will have to decide whether those features really worth that much. So when the property turnover happens, the owners of a property make their decisions and price the benefits that they will get from the features. So in short, what we did is to collect residential land turnover data and map the landscape features as well as the other features that may also influence the land price, and put them into a regression model and reverse engineered the contributions that landscape features made to the land price. So first step, clean the data, adjusted them for inflation, and remove some of the identified anomalies. And in the second step, we mapped all the public open spaces in Lincoln and all the water body and the area covered by mature trees and sport fields. It's just more to say that there's the orange dot and the playgrounds, so it's still up to say, and subdivisions, and most importantly, the geocoded turnovers. So once you get everything mapped, you can already start to see some patterns, but to get the reliable and defensible result, you have to build the model and analyze the data statistically. So another step to take is to calculate the distance between each turnovers and all those landscape features. And this image shows how such distance is calculated by using GIS. And then all the data we prepared were imported into a statistical program for analysis. The result shows that the distance to the closest green space is one of the most important factors affecting the land price. So for each minute that the land gets further away from a green space, there will be a $4.6 drop in each unit land price. So if we keep all the other factors the same, a property that is immediately under a green space is expected to have a unit land price of $418 per square meter. But if it is 5 meters away from the green space, its price is going to be only $495 square meter. So this means that for a typical sized section, you will get a brand new iPhone 14 as a compensation if you moved from a property neighboring green space to another property that's 39 meters away. And the distance to a Tesla is only 1.6 kilometer or 2 minutes short drive. So we have also studied how the perceived values of landscape features will change throughout the past 2 decades. And the result shows that getting closer to a public open space always have positive influence on the land price. But there are 2 clear drops at the year 2011 and the year 2020. But relating the result to the general economic climate, we found that the factors like green spaces were considered less important when black swan event happens. So when the 2011 earthquake and the 2019 pandemic happened, the general economic climate and inflation makes people rush to buy a house. So getting a property secured become more important than choosing a landscape feature around. And by introducing other features into the model, we found some other features like water body and playground may not always be positive factors. And sometimes getting too close to a playground or water may lead to lower expected land price. There are many possible reasons for this, such as noise from playgrounds, the insects and flies around the wetlands, and the lack of privacy. And by chatting with the sales manager of the Tifariki subdivision, we confirmed that those reasons are really the major concerns when people choosing a house. And by using the regression model we built, we can also predict how the land price is going to change if we make some adjustment to the landscape features. So for example, if we remove the small piece of the public open space shown in the right circle, many sections adjacent to that open space are expected to have a drop in their land price. And by add up all the land value changes, we can actually work out the perceived values of that green space. So in this case, the green space is worth more than $12 million. So it actually gets a similar unit land price with the typical residential sections. So this means that increasing the percentage of public open space to some extent may sometimes lead to a better overall economic return. However, the last model here currently still have some limitations. It is quite sensitive to location of the landscape features, but it's insensitive to their size and qualities. So it probably would be useful to map the quality of the landscape features in the future and bring that into the model. As this final monetized study is not yet finished, some more improvements will need to be made to the narrative. And but overall, we consider that the approach that we explored as a possible method that can help us to better understand our own design and the possible negative perception towards getting too close to wetlands and playgrounds, for example. And our approach in some other cases can also provide us with some more evidence regarding the provision of public open spaces and the importance of accessibility. And that's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Henry. And as well. And Jamie, can you hear us online?
Hello, yes.
Hi, Jamie, we might have some questions for you as well. So